Emma gripped the steering wheel, her heart thrumming with a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. The city faded into the rearview mirror. Rolling hills painted in hues of emerald and gold stretched before her. This was it, her escape, her sanctuary, Briar Hollow. The old farmhouse stood amidst ancient oaks, weathered yet dignified. The paint was peeling and the porch sagged, but Emma could envision its restoration. Days melted into weeks as Emma threw herself into the renovations. The silence of the countryside became a balm to her soul. It was perfect, or so she thought. One evening, while unpacking boxes in the attic, Emma felt a cold draft. The chill seemed to seep through the very walls, sending a shiver down her spine. A floorboard creaked behind her, the sound echoing in the stillness. She turned, heart-pounding, but saw nothing. The attic was empty, save for the boxes and old furniture. Just the house settling, she murmured to herself, trying to shake off the unease. But the incidents began to multiply. Each day brought new mysteries. Objects vanished, only to reappear in odd locations. Emma found herself questioning her own memory. Doors creaked open in the dead of night as if moved by unseen hands. Whispers seemed to emanate from the walls, soft and unintelligible, yet unmistakably there. Then came the night she found the diary, hidden away for decades. It was tucked beneath a loose floorboard, its leather cover brittle with age, the pages yellowed and fragile. The diary belonged to Sarah, the original mistress of Briar Hollow, who lived there over a century ago. Sarah wrote of strange occurrences, shadows and voices calling her name, much like what Emma was experiencing. Emma slammed the diary shut, a shiver running down her spine. The past and present seemed to blur, leaving her with more questions than answers. The hauntings escalated, growing more intense with each passing night. One night, Emma awoke to the sound of shattering glass echoing through the silent house. Heart pounding, she rushed downstairs to find a vase lying in pieces on the wooden floor. Standing over the wreckage was a shadowy figure, its form barely visible in the dim light. Emma gasped, her blood turning to ice as fear gripped her heart. The figure turned towards her, its eyes glowing with a malevolent red light that pierced the darkness. Terrified, Emma fled back to her room, slamming the door shut behind her. The power was out, plunging the house into complete darkness. As she huddled beneath her bed, she could hear heavy footsteps approaching her door, each step louder than the last. They stopped right outside her room, and a low growl reverberated through the walls, sending chills down her spine. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke, Emma stumbled out of the house, desperate for reassurance and answers. She found her elderly neighbour, Mrs. Hawthorne, tending her garden with a calm demeanour. Mrs. Hawthorne listened patiently, her voice heavy with sympathy. "You've seen him, the shadow of Briar Hollow," she said, her eyes filled with a knowing sadness. Mrs. Hawthorne told Emma the legend of Briar Hollow, a tale that had been passed down through generations. The house was built on cursed land, a place where shadows seemed to linger even in the brightest daylight. A century ago, a farmer had murdered his family within its walls, driven mad by greed and paranoia. The tragedy had left an indelible mark on the community. He had then taken his own life, his spirit forever bound to the land, haunting the fields and the house. The house had stood empty ever since, shunned by the locals who whispered of ghostly apparitions and eerie sounds at night. "You have to leave, child," Mrs. Hawthorne urged, her voice trembling with urgency and fear. Emma knew she was right. The stories, the warnings, they all pointed to one thing. She had to get away. She packed a bag, her hands shaking with a mix of fear and urgency. knowing she had to leave before it was too late. As she made her way to her car, she felt eyes on her, an unsettling sensation that made her quicken her pace. Emma screamed and ran towards her car, her heart pounding like a drum, the weight of the legend pressing down on her. Emma fumbled with her keys, her fingers numb with terror. The engine roared to life and she sped away. She risked a glance in the rearview mirror. The shadowy figure stood at the edge of the property, fading into the darkness. Relief washed over Emma, but the car suddenly lurched, the engine dying. She was stranded. As darkness enveloped the car, Emma could hear slow, deliberate footsteps. The driver's side window shattered, and a cold, clammy hand reached in. Emma was never heard from again. The next morning the farmhouse stood silent, its windows dark and empty. The Hollow claims another. For more thrilling tales like comment and subscribe. Uncover the horrors that hide in plain sight.